after President Biden allowed Ukraine to strike parts of Russia with U.S.-built and proffered missiles. Putin is threatening to retaliate with strikes against U.S. facilities and says his military hit Ukraine today with a medium-range hypersonic ballistic missile. The Pentagon just responded moments ago. Watch this.
We've seen this type of, dangerous, reckless rhetoric before from President Putin. What we're focused on is continuing to support Ukraine with what it needs.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst reports live from Kyiv. He has been watching all of this up close and was in the tunnels with President Zelensky just the other day. Trey, what about this new development?
Yeah, Martha, good afternoon. We know that overnight, Russia launched a new missile into Ukraine, targeting the southern city of the Dnipro. This was the first time that such a large weapon was used on the battlefield since this conflict began 2.5 years ago. And it raises questions about the message that Russia is trying to send. Ukraine initially claimed the missile was an intercontinental ballistic missile, but Russian President Putin says it was an intermediate ballistic missile. The Russian leader said in the future, civilians will be warned to leave areas where more advanced missiles will be launched. Putin added this about the involvement of the West.
We consider ourselves in the right to use our weapons against those nations that use their weapons against us. And in terms of escalation, we will respond as surely and clearly.
The escalation comes as Ukrainian forces are now targeting deeper into Russia using U.S. and British-supplied long-range missiles, while overnight, the Biden administration approved the transfer of anti-personnel mines to Ukraine. These moves are seen by the Russians as crossing a red line, prompting officials here in Kyiv to brace for an increase in missile and drone attacks.
So as you guys just heard, Russia is now threatening to target U.S. facilities. And look, all I'm going to say is this. I would not want to be living in Poland right now. I repeat, I would not want to be living in Poland right now. Why, you ask? Well, if Russia does decide to take on NATO head on in a full-scale war, the first thing they will do is they will try to disrupt communications. And there's already evidence that that is happening. Of course, we could see things like cyber attacks in the near future. But the next thing they will do is they will target missile defense systems in the region and throughout Europe. They will target NATO missile defense bases throughout the area and throughout Europe. And it just so happens that there is a brand spanking new NATO missile defense base in Poland. I'm talking, this thing is new. Like, they just built this not that long ago. And it's not like this is top secret information. You can literally go to the homepage of NATO's website, and all of the information is right there. Let's go ahead and take a look. NATO missile defense base in Poland, now mission ready. Now, this comes from July. A new U.S. ballistic missile defense site in Redzikowo, Poland is now operational and available for the defense of the alliance, dubbed Aegis Ashore. This site is part of a larger NATO missile shield and is designed to detect, track, and intercept ballistic missiles in flight. This is an important step for transatlantic security and NATO's ability to defend itself against the growing threat of ballistic missiles, NATO's Secretary General said. Ballistic missiles have been widely used during conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. As a defensive alliance, we cannot ignore that threat. Missile defense is an essential element for NATO's core task of collective defense, said Mr. Stoltenberg. NATO's ballistic missile defense allows for the detection of a missile attack and uses radar data to guide an interceptor to destroy the adversary's offensive ballistic missile. The missile defense site in Poland can defend against short to intermediate range ballistic missiles. Aegis Ashore is a key component of NATO's ballistic missile defense enhanced operational capability, declared by allied heads of state and government at the Washington summit. NATO ballistic missile defense's mission is to protect NATO's European populations, territory, and forces against the increasing threat posed by ballistic missiles. Key elements of NATO's missile shield include the 2 U.S. Aegis Ashore sites in Poland and Romania, along with U.S. Navy destroyers out of Rota, Spain, and an early warning radar in Turkey. Aegis Ashore is purely defensive. About 200 military personnel are stationed at the 2 interceptor sites in Poland and Romania. The site in Romania has been operational since 2016. So, if this does blow into a full-scale conflict between Russia and NATO, which right now all signs point towards that's happening. And I know that a lot of people are optimistic that maybe, this new administration will take over and maybe the new administration will stop this conflict from happening. But the current administration, the moves that they have made over the past couple of weeks don't make any sense at all. They only make sense if you want World War III. And it looks like that's what NATO wants. And I think they may get it. And I think that it may be too late for the next administration to do anything about it. And if Russia does decide to make this move against NATO, that base in Poland is probably one of the first places that is going to be completely blown off the map. Now, it's a missile defense base, but I'm not sure if their defenses will be able to stop the new missiles that Russia just dropped on Ukraine the other day. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, which this is something I don't want to find out. You don't want to find out, okay? You don't want to find out if we're capable of stopping these things, because by the time that happens, then you already know World War III is here and possibly the end of the world, because if we have nuclear powers fighting each other and neither side wants to back down and both sides want to push the red button, then it's just mutually assured destruction. And I think that's what the elites maybe want. They want to go live in their underground bunkers and destroy the rest of us. That's what it looks like. But let's go ahead and roll this news clip really quickly, and then I'll be right back with more.
Yeah, well, look, this is a serious escalation, as you just heard from Russia, for the first time, threatening directly not just to hit a target within Ukraine, but to hit a NATO target. We're talking about that base that you all have been discussing in Poland. This is in the northern part of the country. And it's important to get a base where offensive weapons are kept. This is purely a defensive base. It was largely brought up by the United States, but again, a NATO base with missile defense capabilities in the case that Russia or, frankly, China or someone else might try to attack a NATO nation. This would be one of the first lines of defense there. And obviously, this isn't happening in a bubble, Adrian. This comes just a day after Vladimir Putin went on TV and announced that new weapon that he says they fired off, this new ballistic missile that has the capability to carry a nuclear weapon on it. Now, there was no nuclear weapon in that attack, but still, the threat is there. The fact that he is now suggesting this is concerning and is an escalation. And it comes as the United States and the UK have now greenlit the Ukrainian ability to launch American and British-made weapons into Russia. So across the board, what you're seeing is concern that this could potentially be an escalation of the conflict more generally. But when the United States hears Vladimir Putin make these kinds of threats, obviously they take it seriously.
Joe, what are we hearing from American officials in response to these threats from Moscow?
Yeah, so interestingly, we reached out to several senators, several lawmakers, people who were in the defense sphere. We're talking about the Armed Services Committees, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Relations Committees. We've not gotten responses directly from them yet on the threats to the NATO base in Poland, which is a bit surprising to me, at least not yet. But on the other threat, on Russia sending this new weapon, as they say, we did hear the White House commenting on it yesterday. This is Karine Jean-Pierre from the podium.
The escalation at every turn, at every step, is coming from Russia. They're the ones who are escalating this. They're the ones who started this war. It is because of their aggression into a sovereign territory, Ukraine. And this war can end today. You hear us say this over and over again. It can, if Russia would stop the war and stop what they're doing with their aggression.
Adrian, what I found interesting from my perch here on Capitol Hill is Democrats generally are united in supporting Ukraine. Republicans are more split. You've got a faction party that says we've spent too much money on Ukraine. You've got another faction that is very pro-Ukraine. And that faction of the party, led in part by Mitch McConnell, has been criticizing the Biden administration for not acting quickly enough. And what he has said is that when we continue to fear Russian escalation, what we are missing is that Russia continues to escalate anyway. So just an interesting perspective, I think, from Mitch McConnell and others who agree with his view on this issue.
You know, when I saw that Biden gave Ukraine the go-ahead to use our long-range missiles, I was hoping that we would have some prominent voices over in Europe that would be opposed to this. I was hoping that we would have some European leaders that would be against this. Because the reality is, if this big war does spark off, they're going to be the ones that feel it the most. You know, a NATO war between NATO and Russia, that's going to be fought on European soil for the most part. It's not going to be fought over here in America. Now, I'm not saying that we won't see missile strikes or something in America. Who knows what could happen? All I'm saying, the full-fledged ground war, that's something that's going to be raging on your doorsteps. So I was hoping that some of these European leaders would take this threat seriously and they would be more of a voice of reason, because over here in America, it's like we're so isolated that we feel as if we're not as affected by a lot of the stuff that goes on in that region of the world, or in any other region of the world for that matter. But for the most part, when I look at these European leaders and I look at what they're saying, a lot of them seem as if they want war as well. And some of them are talking very recklessly. And I think most of them know where this is headed. And right after Biden gives Ukraine the go-ahead to use some missiles, I believe Britain gave Ukraine the go-ahead to use, I forget the name of the weapon, some type of shadow something. I mean, they're just, it's like, okay, Biden is going to be out of office, right? In under 2 months. But they're trying to fast forward this, right? They're trying to speed things up. The goal was always for a major conflict. It looks like the goal was always for World War III. Now, they didn't want you to know that was the goal. They were fine with slowly inching towards that goal, you know, while everyone was asleep and not paying attention. Now, it looks like their plans may be thwarted if the next administration takes over and tries to, you know, find some type of peace solutions. So now they have a little over a month to try to start World War III. And by God, they are trying really hard to do so, folks. And it's very concerning, because to see this amount of escalation, we've been dealing with the conflict in Ukraine for a long time. In fact, it kind of became an afterthought. People weren't even worried about it anymore for the longest, but now it's dominating the conversation again, because they've decided to take things up 10 notches right before Biden steps out of office and someone else takes over. So the coming days, the coming weeks are going to be very interesting. I'm hoping that all sides show restraint, way more restraint than what we've seen, but it doesn't seem like that's the case right now. And I just have to be honest with you all about that. And the rest of the world, they're preparing. The rest of the world, they're building bomb shelters. They're stocking up on food. They're passing out pamphlets, getting their citizens ready. They have plans for if missiles strike their city, the citizens know where to go. Over here in America, we're not having any of those conversations about what to do if war pops off. None of those conversations are being had at all. But hey, we could have some of those conversations down in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you all down there. While you're down there, though, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.